I was in high school in Glen Ridge, and my grades were bad, and I was in the 11th grade, and I myself with two other guys decided that we would go down to see the Army recruiter down in Bloomfield, New Jersey, and that's back in 1959, well, yeah, 1959, whatever thereabouts. And on the way in there, they went in and we took our tests. You take a basic test and all. And walking out of the hallway, this Marine recruiter was there, and his name was Sergeant Guy. He was a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. And he grabbed me alongside. I guess out of the other two guys, he looked at me. We were all pretty tall. And we were clean and decent, no beards or long hair or anything. And he said, "Have you ever thought about the Marine Corps?" And I said, "Well, I had an uncle that was killed in Guadalcanal in 1942. I was only a month old when he was killed. And he was only 22 years old at the time. And he's probably the real hero in the family as far as that goes with service members. We've had a lot of service members in the family. And so I decided to talk to him, and about 2 weeks later, I was on the way to Parris Island, South Carolina. I was assigned to, the first duty station was Albany, Georgia. And it was a Marine Corps Supply Center. Today they call it the East Coast Logistics Center. There's two of them, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. And since the Marine Corps is very small, 180, 190,000 men, they have two supply centers, one in the East and one in the West, and there's only 3 divisions, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And when I went in, there was only 2 divisions. So at wartime, they went up to 3 divisions, the 4th division being the Women Marines. All right, so, and they were on a base too, but they were far away from the men. So it was kind of funny. But I got assigned to Albany, Georgia. It was a big supply center. We handled everything from airplanes down to nuts and bolts. I mean, every weapon that the Marine Corps used, all their vehicles, tanks, trucks, jeeps, and those kind of things, radios, and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of neat. And I served there about, well, about three and a half years I served there. Once you finish up your 4 years, you have 2 years. You have a year of active reserve and a year of inactive reserve. Both of those 2 years I was on the police department, because when we got out in March, in June, I was on the police department. So it was worrisome there when I would see a Marine staff car pull up to headquarters and they'd call me in there for some unknown reason. Do you know so-and-so and whatever? You know, people looking for information. That I would see that when, uh-oh, they're back for me. You know, I'm going back. And about that time, Vietnam was very hot then at that time. So, but that never happened. My father was a policeman. My grandfather was a policeman. So the 3rd generation. So that time was very, very satisfying. 26 years, a long time. Things changed over that time. But yeah, that was it. It was gratifying. So where I didn't see, you know, I didn't go into combat in the Marines. There's still that training there that helped me a great deal in the police department. You know, stand tall, look good, be neat, shoe shine, haircut, you know, look good in uniform, and be decent to people, you know. So, because being on the police department was not like being in Vietnam, but I mean, it was the same thing of dark alleys and stairways and bad people and good people and, you know, a mix of that. So it was a different way of serving. Young and foolish, but married, had 1 child, had a 2nd child before we got out of the service, and then came back to New Jersey to live. Yes, there was a lot of demonstrations, a lot of riots and all. We never got involved in that. At the same time, there was a black white issue with the, you know, freeing, you know, I can't remember what you might call it. There were a lot of riots because of blacks and whites. And we were right involved. In Georgia, there was a lot of unsettled issues that the blacks had, and also the whites, and they weren't too nice to each other. And it was something to see. Probably that's probably the most combat I saw was in the towns where there were looting and rioting and things like that. When we got out of boot camp, we went home for 10 days. We all got back together, and they put us on a plane, and we landed in, I guess we landed in Charlotte, I guess. And from there, we took a local train to Albany, and there were 2 or 3 black fellas. A good friend of mine right from East Orange went with us. And we got off the train in Albany, Georgia. And, you know, it's, of course, a town. Never been to Georgia before that I remember. And, you know, nice, quaint and most people were friendly, but we walked in across the street and asked a couple coming our way where the USO was, because the USO was a place where we would meet, get a bus to the base. And they looked at us and just kept on walking. But in that time, between 1960 and 1963, you had the Bay of Pigs invasion, and we shipped a lot of equipment to Cuba. You had the the missile crisis, and you also had the President of the United States assassinated, John F. Kennedy. So there were a lot of hard feelings. I remember the meeting that we had, because I got promoted to the rank of an NCO, and of course the first sergeant in the battalion had a meeting that afternoon on November 22nd about that we were going to war against Russia. You know, he thought it was Russian, so we would go to war against the Russians. That was a big thing. And no, the feeling wasn't that our Navy would cover us and Air Force and whatever, and take those precautions. You know, so it wasn't really life as usual, because we were very busy, with supplies. Going here, going there, going everywhere, because they got a lot of men ready to possibly go to Cuba. And that's only 90 miles off the coast of Florida. So the feeling was that it was an active time, but it wasn't, nobody, I think, was fearful of it. It was still more a political thing. But, it's always the constant thing with the Cold War, the end of the Cold War. That was also the same period of time that we were in, was that Cold War period where, they're flying spy planes, and the B-52s were in the air all the time, so. And we were in Georgia. We were located right about a few miles away from a SAC Air Force Base, which is Strategic Air Command. And when they had alerts, they had probably, 30, 35 B-52 planes that they locked down everything. They'd all get on the runway and take off, and they wouldn't come back for 24 hours. So they were all testing each other. And this went on state by state wherever they had SAC bases too. So it was a real thing. It was a real. And it was a big sign. I remember it was called Turner Air Force Base, and I remember the sign outside the base said, "If you don't hear this noise, then you've lost your freedom." So when all that noise, these are big planes that make a lot of noise when they take off, and you have 20 or 30 planes taking off. That's a lot of noise, dramatically. Yeah, the President of the United States has been assassinated. Most of the people that were on the base of all different ages and different histories in the service had never experienced that. So when somebody shoots and kills the President of the United States, it's an assault on the country. It's an assault on everybody. And of course, a lot of fears arise out of that. We're going to war. Somebody is going to attack us, or we're going to attack them. Well, the things that got me is when kids, I'll say college-age kids, were burning their draft cards, burning the American flag. You definitely don't want to do that. We have I don't want to say that. We do have a saying: if you want to burn the flag, wrap yourself in it first, because far too many men have come back under that flag.